one hand on her wrist. One joke too far. 3 men about to learn what war tastes like in a restaurant. "Get your hands off me," she said quietly. But the 3 men just laughed louder. The biggest one grabbed her wrist harder, leaning close enough that she could smell the whiskey on his breath. "What are you going to do about it, sweetheart?" he sneered. That's when Riley Stroud made a choice that would leave the entire restaurant in stunned silence. Because what these men didn't know was that the woman they were about to assault had once ended a hostage standoff in the Volcour Highlands with nothing but a sidearm and a shattered collarbone. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how this started. It was 8:47 p.m. at Langston Grill, one of those upscale spots where the steak is dry-aged, the lighting ambient, and the cheapest bottle of wine costs more than your electric bill. Riley Stroud sat alone at booth S3, a half-moon corner seat with clear lines to both exits and a mirrored sight line to the kitchen. Old habits, they never die. They just learn to wear dresses. At 40, Riley had the kind of stillness that made people turn twice without knowing why. Her green dress fit like it was made for muscle, not vanity. Posture loose, but intentional. But it was her eyes gunmetal gray, clear, unblinking, that told the real story. To the other diners, she looked like a professional winding down alone. Maybe a defense attorney, maybe a surgeon. They noticed the matte steel bracelet, the way she held her wine glass with 2 fingers, the quiet confidence. What they didn't notice was how she tracked every entrance, how her left heel hovered, always ready, or how her purse sat tilted at the precise 2 o'clock angle for a clean draw. Riley Stroud was celebrating, though no one knew it. 14 years, 6 tours, Tier 4 designation. That morning, she'd signed her final demobilization papers. Tonight was supposed to be her quiet goodbye to the warfighter she used to be, and that's when they walked in. 3 men, loud and swaying a storm of sweat, cologne, and entitlement. Trey Halden, who's 6'3", built for intimidation. Kyle Nance and Rex Dawson, smaller, quicker, more unpredictable. The kind who only felt big by making someone else feel small. They'd been drinking since noon, celebrating Trey's promotion. Not because he earned it, but because nepotism buries records as easily as it opens doors. "Look at this place," Trey muttered, scanning the room like a predator. Uptight chicks everywhere. The hostess tried to seat them near the back. Trey wasn't having it. His gaze locked on Riley, sitting alone, still. "No fear. That one," he said, chin tipping toward booth S3. "Let's show her what real men look like." Kyle hesitated. Rex didn't. They followed like always. The jazz didn't pause. Silverware clinked. Conversations blurred. No one noticed the storm headed toward table S3. Except her. Families kept eating. Couples kept talking. Business meetings carried on laughter, wine, ambient jazz. Nobody noticed the 3 predators narrowing in. Nobody except Riley Stroud. She felt them before she saw them. That 6th sense, the one honed over 6 combat tours, whispered its quiet warning. Not panic, not fear, just data, incoming. She took a measured sip of wine, eyes lowered, and used the curvature of the glass to watch their approach. 3 males, intoxicated, coordinated, not wandering. Target acquired her table. She set her glass down with steady hands. Run the list public space. Civilians nearby. No clear egress. Rules of engagement different now. De-escalation was option 1. Always start there. This wasn't the Volcour Highlands. There were no rooftops, no sand, no embedded insurgents. Just linen napkins, clinking silver, and a booth in Clearwater, Idaho. Well. A voice boomed like a bad joke, loud, unwelcome, slurred. Trey Halden. He loomed over her table like he owned the room, arms outstretched in a mock embrace. "What do we have here?" He grinned, all dressed up with no one to impress. Riley looked up slowly, expression neutral, calm, eyes gray, unblinking, 15 years of threat assessment kicked in like muscle memory. Trey Alpha, loud, drunk, entitled, would escalate. Rex right shoulder, follower. The type who acted second but struck harder. Kyle twitchy, nervous energy. Likely the first to get physical if pushed. She gave a polite nod. "Good evening," she said. Voice controlled, deliberate. "Just having a quiet dinner. Perhaps you gentlemen could find your own table." Trey laughed sharp, brash. A sound that made the family in the next booth pull their kids in tighter. "Oh, we could," he said, sliding into the booth across from her like an unwanted shadow. "But you look lonely. You look like you need some company." Kyle and Rex flanked the table like sentries, not touching her. Yet. But their placement wasn't casual. Riley kept her tone even. "I appreciate the offer, but I prefer eating alone. I'm sure your server can find you a great table." That's when Trey's face shifted. His grin thinned, his eyes narrowed. Rejection. Not something he was built to process, not from a woman he'd already decided was his to belittle. "You think you're better than us," he said, the words slithering into a whisper. "Wearing that dress, sipping your wine, pretending you're a goddamn queen." The father in the next booth looked like he might stand, but his wife caught his arm, fear flashing in her eyes. Riley barely noticed. She was already somewhere else, that place where everything slowed down, where noise faded, where nothing existed but angles and timing. She had lived in that place, breached compounds in that place, buried teammates in that place. But this wasn't a war zone. These weren't combatants. She had to be different now. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," she said softly, reaching for her purse. "I'll pay my check and be on my way. You can have the table." And that's when Trey made his first real mistake. His hand lunged across the table, thick fingers closing around her wrist. He squeezed hard knuckles whitening with the pressure. Enough to bruise, enough to hurt. "You're not going anywhere until we say you can go." And here's what people didn't know about Riley Stroud for 14 years. She'd operated under one cardinal rule. If someone presents a threat to you or innocent civilians, you eliminate the threat. No hesitation, no second chances. But here, the rules were different. Here, the danger wasn't a rifle or a roadside bomb. It was a drunk man's grip, and a lifetime of consequence for the woman who dared to push back. Her eyes didn't flinch, her breath didn't break, but somewhere between bone and nerve, a switch was already flipping. The woman she'd been for the last 14 years, the one who ended black site missions in the Volcor Highlands, who once dragged a wounded comrade 5 clicks uphill under sniper fire, was screaming at her to act. But the woman she was trying to become, the one who wanted mornings with sunlight instead of sirens, was still holding the leash. "Sir," she said, voice steady, cold steel beneath calm. "You need to let go of my arm, right now." Trey Halden didn't flinch, didn't even hear her. His ego was too loud. His grip tightened, a show of power, not purpose. He leaned in. "You gonna scream, sweetheart? You gonna cry?" Then louder. To the room. "Someone call her boyfriend." Oh wait, she doesn't have one. The diners tensed. The silence was thick enough to crack. And that's when it happened. From the next booth, a man stood up. Plaid shirt, dad energy, wedding ring. "Let her go," he said, "before this gets worse." Trey turned slow, smug. "And what exactly are you gonna do?" "Mr. Flannel." The man didn't blink. "Whatever I have to." Rex snorted and stepped forward. And just like that, the pack turned. Kyle moved behind. Rex gave a half punch, not quite a hit. More of a shove, enough to make the man stumble, knock into a chair, almost fall. The restaurant gasped. One woman stood up instinctively. Someone dropped a wine glass. Riley moved, not for herself, but because someone decent had tried and got punished for it. Her chair slid back without a sound, and then her hand came down on Trey's wrist like a gavel. A clean nerve press's fingers shot open like a reflex. He yelped, actually yelped, like a slapped toddler. Rex turned only to catch her elbow perfectly in his chest. He folded like a cheap lawn chair, hit the carpet with a grunt and a whimper. Kyle lunged, arms flailing. She sidestepped, grabbed a passing dinner roll from a plate, and pop. Stuffed it in his open mouth mid-charge before sweeping his leg. He landed hard. The roll bounced once on his forehead, then rolled into the salad bar. Trey, furious and red, roared like a wounded moose. He charged. Bad ID. She pivoted, grabbed his arm mid-swing, and used his momentum to spin him right into the corner of the table. Thud, then silence. He slumped sideways, stunned. Rex groaned something about calling his dad. Kyle just stayed down, chewing the roll like it might save him. Forks frozen mid-air. A baby started clapping. No one knew whether to cheer or hide. 17 seconds, 3 men down, no blood, just bruises, bent egos, and a bread product used as a non-lethal weapon. And one woman standing, not even breathing hard. She picked up her purse, straightened her sleeve, and looked around like she'd just returned from the restroom. Her dress was still perfect, except for a small tear in the sleeve. The restaurant had gone dead silent. 40-something people sat frozen, forks halfway to their mouths, wine glasses suspended mid-air. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Riley Stroud looked around the room, taking in the shock on every face. Phones were pointed in her direction. Children peeked around their parents to see what had just happened. She calmly adjusted her posture, picked up her purse, and placed a folded $100 bill on the table. "Apologies for the disturbance," she said, her voice even and clear in the silence. These gentlemen appeared to be having a medical episode. That's when Detective Jalen Merrick walked through the front door. He was off duty, just looking for a quiet dinner with his wife after a long week working gang cases in District South. The last thing he expected was to walk into what looked like the aftermath of a bar fight at Langston Grill. He took in the scene with a cop's eye. 3 men down, 1 woman standing, a room full of stunned witnesses. His first thought, the woman was the victim, maybe in shock, maybe barely holding it together. Then he looked again. Trey Halden was semi-conscious, his broken nose bent at a bad angle, already swelling to twice its size. Rex Dawson was curled on the floor, still struggling to catch his breath. Kyle Nance hadn't moved. A goose egg was forming on the side of his head. These weren't the results of lucky punches. These were clean, efficient strikes, delivered by someone who knew what they were doing. Merrick's eyes went back to Riley. She wasn't pacing, wasn't flustered, wasn't out of breath. She looked like she was waiting for her car. "Ma'am," he said, pulling out his badge. "Detective Merrick, can you tell me what happened?" She glanced at the badge, then at him. Something in her gaze made him straighten the automatic posture of someone used to being outranked. "They approached my table uninvited. When I tried to leave, they prevented me." The situation escalated when they became physical. Merrick looked around. Every phone was still pointed at them. Whatever had happened, it was already out there. "I'll need to see some ID." She reached into her purse and handed him her license. He read it, then looked again. Stroud. Riley Stroud. Something clicked. He pulled out his phone and searched. A few seconds later, his expression changed. "You're the one from Claylight, the hostage op in Volcor. You got the Echelon medal." Her jaw tightened slightly. "Former," she said. As of 8 hours ago, the room was still silent, but now they were all listening. Detective Merrick would later tell reporters that she gave a full statement, calm, clear, no dramatics. She answered every question, signed every page, and left the restaurant only after being cleared of any wrongdoing. Where she went after that, no one knows. The restaurant manager would eventually frame the $100 bill she left on the table. Right above it, a photo grainy, taken from security footage of Riley standing alone at booth S3. Below it, a small plaque reserved for the ones who don't ask for credit, but earn it anyway. Trey Halden spent 6 months in county jail. He now tells first dates why his nose bends left and why he flinches when anyone touches his wrist. He never approached another woman without consent again. 3 weeks later, a video compilation surfaced on YouTube 5 times you picked the wrong woman. Riley's restaurant encounter was number 1. It passed 18 million views in 5 days. The comment section became a flood of veteran voices, stories of being underestimated, dismissed, provoked, of having restraint mistaken for weakness, of strength confused with silence. Top comment read, "This is why you treat everyone with respect. You never know who you're sitting next to." 1 month later, a private scholarship appeared under a new name, the Stroud Valor Grant, funded anonymously. Its mission: support female candidates pursuing special operations training and teach them what the uniform alone cannot. 6 months after Clearwater, she surfaced again, not in uniform, not in headlines, but in a gym, Sentinel One, a non-profit she quietly launched offering self-defense training for women in underserved communities. She never gave interviews, never posted a statement. But when a student once asked her how to stay calm under pressure, Riley just smiled. "Violence," she said, "should always be your last option. But when it becomes necessary, be the most dangerous person in the room, for exactly as long as it takes." The student nodded. Most of them always did, but only a few ever truly understood that the difference between a warrior and a bully is knowing exactly when to stop.